This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch this Friday, January 10th. I'm Mark Martin. We begin with growing evidence to suggest that Iran was responsible for shooting down a Ukrainian passenger plane earlier this week. It comes at a time when the House of Representatives voted to limit President Trump's ability to take military action against Iran. Gary Lane brings us the latest.
Western officials now say it is highly likely that Iran was responsible for shooting down a Ukrainian passenger airliner late Tuesday, killing all 176 people on board. The crash occurred just hours after Iran launched a barrage of missiles against U.S. air bases in Iraq. This video shows the moment the Boeing 737 was struck by a missile. An Iranian resident recorded video of the moment the plane crashed to the ground outside Tehran. Iranian media is broadcasting CCTV video that shows debris on fire streaking past the camera.
The evidence indicates that the plane was shot down by an Iranian surface-to-air missile.
Western intelligence officials say it's likely the Iranians fired off the anti-aircraft missile because they mistook the Ukrainian passenger plane for a possible U.S. fighter jet. Iran has invited officials from Boeing, the U.S., and Canada to investigate, but the U.S. may not want Americans to go to Iran with tensions so high. Just hours after the crash, Iran had cleared all evidence of the accident from the crash zone. The black boxes have been recovered, but it remains unclear if Iran will turn them over to Western investigators. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the House passed the War Powers Resolution, which says the president must inform Congress before taking further military action against Iran. Only 3 Republicans voted for the measure, 8 Democrats against. The resolution is not law, it's non-binding, simply a sense of the House resolution that requires no presidential signature. But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the measure has real teeth. She says Trump endangered the lives of American diplomats and service members when he ordered the strike that killed Iranian Quds Force General Qasem Soleimani.
The president to say, I inform you by reading my tweets. No, that's not the relationship that our founders had in mind.
Pelosi and other Democrat leaders are upset because the president did not inform them prior to taking action against Iran. At a rally in Toledo Thursday night, the president said he had good reason not to tell them about it.
You know, these are split-second decisions. You have to make a decision. We didn't have time to call up Nancy, who is not operating with a full deck.
The resolution passed after Trump said Soleimani was planning to blow up our embassy in Iraq. Gary Lane, CBN News.
The killing of Soleimani has focused attention on the reality of many Shia militia groups throughout the Middle East. As Chris Mitchell reports, one researcher has spent years studying these groups and has an important message to the West and the U.S.
Important to look at.
Philip Smythe created the Shia Militia Mapping Project, an exhaustive research effort identifying Iranian-backed Shia militias throughout the Middle East. He says they're an extension of Iranian power.
They are the spear point for the Iranians. You know, we talk about their nuclear weapon and the nuclear threat that's coming out of Iran, but this is the real nuclear weapon on the ground. This is what affects change in the region. This is what's kept dictators in power that the Iranians have wanted. For instance, Bashar al-Assad. It's the Shia militias that supported him. How do they control Lebanon? Lebanese Hezbollah.
Smythe says Qasem Soleimani masterminded these states within states and wove them throughout the region from Iran to Lebanon.
But he was a guy on the ground who knew how to build relationships, and not just that. What made him very important was how he was able to delegate to other commanders. He knew who the right people were, who was going to be ideologically loyal, who could be financially loyal.
These militia groups number as many as 200,000 and pose a threat to America's #1 ally in the Middle East, Israel.
A massive one. This is the tip of the spear for the Iranians in terms of fighting the Israelis.
He says Americans should know about these groups and care.
Well, they should care because these groups have been consistently threatening the United States and its interests in the region. And ideologically, they hold that the United States needs to not only be out of the region, but religiously speaking, they view the United States as what they call Shaitan al-Akbar, or the greatest Satan. And that's a true belief that many of the hardcore ideologues hold. That means they want to take American lives when they view it as strategically advantageous.
Based on Smythe's research, it's clear America, Israel, and the West will be dealing with these Shia groups throughout the Middle East for the foreseeable future. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And our Chris Mitchell joins us now with more from our Middle East Bureau. Chris, just how important is Smythe's research on these Shia militias?
Well, Mark, I would say his research is invaluable. I don't think there's anybody else doing quite the extensive research that he has done. More than 10 years. He's lived in Lebanon for a couple of years. He actually speaks to many of these Shiite commanders by phone. He knows them by name. And really what he has uncovered is literally this web of networks throughout the Middle East, much more extensive than I thought. Certainly most people know about Hezbollah in Lebanon. They dominate and influence that state. There have been Shiite militias we know in Syria and Iraq. But he identifies dozens and dozens of these groups that have been networked by Qasem Soleimani. He really was the mastermind behind this, met with all these commanders. He had money to give them, weapons to give them, and they really all answered to the Supreme Leader Khomeini. And so for the Pentagon, for public policy makers, for the public, it's invaluable to know what's happening here. And even though perhaps the short-term crisis may be over, this is an indication that the long-term war will continue.
Chris, what's going on underneath the surface inside Iran in terms of both dissent and revival?
Well, you know, Mark, almost everybody has seen these massive crowds for Soleimani in different cities, millions of Iranians that have gone onto the streets to mourn him. Under the surface is that there's a great deal of dissent. Just a few weeks ago, before Soleimani was killed, there were thousands of people in the streets in Tehran and other cities throughout Iran that were disillusioned and wanted the regime to fall. So that is percolating under the surface. There's also Iranian opposition groups throughout the country that want to see regime change. In addition to that, Mark, there's a spiritual revival going on where literally thousands and thousands of Iranians are coming to faith in Jesus Christ through dreams and vision. This is a supernatural phenomenon. So when you see those massive crowds and you hear them shouting death to America, death to Israel, you really have to take that with a grain of salt, because Iranian Americans and many Iranians themselves who really know what's happening, and they can communicate that by tweets or Twitter, they can communicate that on Facebook, they're saying there's a whole different story underneath the surface there in Iran.
What do you think is next for the region, Chris?
That's a great question, Mark. You know, as I said, you know, the short-term crisis seems to be over. The United States just 1 week ago took out Qasem Soleimani. There was the retaliatory strike just a couple of days ago by Iran, and maybe people are saying, okay, well, this is over for now. And I think it is. Perhaps the short-term crisis is over. But the indication of these Shiite militias throughout the Middle East, Iran's retaliatory strikes in the future, show that this is a long-term battle. You know, many times, Mark, here in the West, we think of 4-year cycles, a presidential cycle. We think of a news cycle, but they think long-term. And one other thing to mention, Mark, is that this is an ideological religious war for them. They want to prepare the way for the Mahdi. This is the 12th Imam of a Shiite Islam. They see themselves as preparing the way of this Mahdi. And so this is what people need to understand as well when they think of this battle between Iran and the United States and the West.
Switching gears now, what do you have on this week's Jerusalem Dateline?
Well, right now, Mark, we're going to have a show really based all on this Iranian crisis. We're going to have an update on the latest as to what's happening with this downed Ukrainian airliner, and also the latest things that are happening on Capitol Hill. We'll also have an extended interview with Philip Smythe. You'll hear more about what his findings have found after more than 10 years of research. And we also have a story about evangelism inside Iran. That's very important to know what's happening, and I'm sure many believers around the world want to know that the good news is being preached inside Iran, and need to pray for the people there, for the Iranian people who have a cry for both political and spiritual freedom.
Amen to that. Thank you, Chris. And you can catch Jerusalem Dateline tonight on the CBN News Channel at 9:30 Eastern. Here at home, Virginia could become the 38th state to approve the Equal Rights Amendment. The ERA, which bans discrimination on the basis of sex, has been dormant for more than 40 years. If Virginia passes the resolution, it could be added to the Constitution. Thursday, the Justice Department released an opinion that the ERA expired because the ratification deadline has passed. Stephanie Stone of Students for Life told CBN News they are already lobbying against it. She says her group is fighting the amendment for a number of reasons.
We opposed the ERA because we believe that it would set women back decades. It would actually eliminate a lot of common sense protections that we've worked in over the years to protect women in our society. And as well, it wouldn't allow for common sense restrictions on abortion as well. So that's something that we focus on as well.
Yeah, explain a little more. Why do you think that the ERA amendment would support abortion?
Sure, absolutely. So in the ERA, basically, it says that a person's sex could not be considered in making a legal preference. And in addition, it says that basically judges cannot vote against certain restrictions on the ERA. So it's really important that we're talking about how this could affect abortion in the future.
Observers say if Virginia ratifies the ERA, one of the states that supported the amendment will likely file a lawsuit challenging the deadline. Brazil's Supreme Court overruled a lower court and is allowing Netflix to show a movie depicting Jesus as a gay man. The movie is called The First Temptation of Christ. It depicts Jesus returning home on his 30th birthday and insinuates he is gay. Religious groups bristled at that, while creators of the film defended it as legitimate freedom of expression. The original ruling by the judge in Rio de Janeiro came in response to a petition by a Brazilian Catholic organization. Coming up, a leading family organization talks about Chick-fil-A's changes in giving after receiving a letter about it from the restaurant's CEO, Dan Cathy.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Welcome back. Chick-fil-A's CEO Dan Cathy's letter responding to an American Family Association petition for clarification on its charitable giving in the future admits fault to some extent. He wrote, Chick-fil-A inadvertently discredited several outstanding organizations that have effectively served communities for years. We spoke with AFA's Tim Wildman about the response.
Are you satisfied with the letter?
Well, yes and maybe, if I can answer that way. I do thank Dan Cathy, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, for responding to our letter. We had over, I think, 110,000 people representing families who signed the petition asking for clarification from the ChickFilA Corporation on their new policy. So I commend him for answering us, and also for the couple lines in the sentence that he did admit that they had made a mistake. I'm paraphrasing now, but he said we inadvertently discredited several outstanding organizations. He's talking about the Salvation Army and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which were the two main ministries that were not being funded, and it was and someone at ChickFilA, the foundation fellow, which is not Dan Cathy, he was the one that announced that they were no longer going to fund these organizations, but rather going to fund other organizations. So I guess I would say it's a good thing for Dan Cathy to respond, and also to admit that their actions did reflect unfairly and wrongly on these Christian organizations that have a long-standing tradition of standing for biblical values and biblical truth. But we're going to have to monitor and wait and see what ChickFilA does from here forward, whether or not they're going to make a full switch, complete switch, to get away from doctrinally sound Christian organizations and just go to organizations that are more secular, I guess you could say, or that are LGBT activist-related organizations. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, so just briefly, and to follow up on what you were just saying, it sounds like you're really going to be looking at their giving record going forward. Is there anything else that you are hoping for from them?
Yes, I wish they would bring slaw back to the ChickFilA. I'm kidding, of course, but I think that they need to be cognizant, and I hope they are, of the fact that millions and millions of Americans, Christian Americans, support their company more than just for the service and the food, but also because they have stood for biblical values unapologetically for a long, long time. And if they get away from that, and if they go the other direction in particular, then they're going to have a lot of people who are just going to find somewhere else to buy their chicken sandwiches.
All right. A lot of people keeping their eye on ChickFilA right now here at CBN as well. Thank you so much, Tim Wildman, for your time.
Thank you, Heather.
Still ahead, a look at last-minute preps for the college football national championship game between LSU and Clemson, NFL playoffs, and more as well with CBN sports reporter Sean Brown.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Thanks for staying with NewsWatch. CBN Sports Director Sean Brown joins us now to talk about some important games coming up in college and pro football. Welcome, Sean.
Yes. Hey, thank you, Mark. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, you as well. First of all, long weekend of anticipation, long week of anticipation for the two Tigers in college football, LSU and Clemson, with their national championship coming up on Monday night. How do you see it?
Man, I see it as an exciting game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Both, teams have worked hard, obviously, to get to this point. LSU has been dominant. Specifically, LSU has been dominant the entire season. Now coming up, Clemson, defending champions, great program. I mean, you have two just, dominant programs over the last few years, just for the first time in a while, competing against each other, and it's going to be great, man. I can't wait to see it. Talent on both sides. LSU, Joe Burrow has been fantastic, Heisman Trophy winner this year. Just fantastic guy, dual threat. But at the same time, Clemson has a dual threat also in Trevor Lawrence. Both guys can put the ball where they need to put it. They can handle the pressure, but they can also run. And that's hard when you're a defender trying to figure out how to cover a mobile quarterback. And we're going to be talking a lot about that today with all of the games that are going to be happening over the next few days. But when you're a defender trying to cover a mobile quarterback, you kind of have this knee-jerk reaction. If you go in, they may put it over your head. If you drop back, they may run. So in the college level or the professional level, it's always a problem. And here you have two great quarterbacks, two great coaches in Ed Orgeron and Daigle Swinney, go heading into this weekend. And so I think it's going to come down to the final minutes. I think it's going to be, the team that can capitalize on mistakes, interceptions, things like that, making sure they make their extra points and field goals. I think it's going to come down to that. I expect a really, really exciting game, highly anticipated, but it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, there was an article in ESPN magazine this week. It actually said, quote, "Move over Alabama, little old Clemson is college football's new superpower." What do you think about that?
There was one time where I might have been slow your roll, but these guys have been consistent. I mean, what they've accomplished over the last 5 years has been nothing short of phenomenal. I mean, the program, with the head coach Daigle Swinney his whole coaching philosophy and instilling a belief in these guys that goes beyond the gridiron. Not that Coach Orgeron for LSU doesn't have that, but in terms of Clemson being consistent, and they've been consistently there over the last few years. There's something to that program. There's something that he's doing that's bigger than football, and you can see it in the guys. You can see it in their quarterback. You can see it in the players. And when you have something like that, where these guys are playing for more than just a game, it's really hard to beat a team like that. Because again, you being down, just last week they were down, they were able to rally together and pull out the win. Things like that, are you all in? Are you buying into what Coach Daigle Swinney is giving you and coaching you? And so, they're buying in. So, that's a legitimate argument at this point, especially because we don't know what's going to happen with Alabama, next year. Who's going to be the quarterback now that Tua has declared for the draft? So we don't know what they're going to look like. So, that's a legitimate argument. And quite honestly, I can agree with it.
Moving on now to the NFL, where do playoffs stand?
All right, right now we've got Titans, Ravens, Texans, Chiefs in the AFC. In the NFC, Vikings, 49ers, Seahawks, Packers. Mark, listen. Hey, this is the most exciting postseason in the NFL I have ever seen, man. In a while, it's very exciting because you don't really know who's going to win. You know the dominant teams. Mm-hmm. You know the Ravens. You know the Chiefs are dominant. The 49ers are dominant. But the Seahawks, Packers, both teams have been playing well, so we don't know which way that's going to go. Like as I said on a college level, I think in the NFL it's going to come down to which team is more disciplined. I got the Ravens, over the Titans. Yes, the Titans beat New England. But this is not the New England team that we're used to seeing. The Ravens have been rolling on all cylinders all season long. Again, you've got a dual threat quarterback that can run the ball and put it where you want. And so it's fantastic. I mean, I expect Ravens over Titans, Chiefs over Texans. I'm going to go with the 49ers and Seahawks, advancing. So that's what I think.
All right, quickly, Kirk Cousins making headlines after the Vikings win over New Orleans. What did he say, Sean?
Here's a guy who has had to deal with adversity his entire NFL career. Can he play? Is he good enough? Was with the Redskins, out of it. At the same time, they drafted Robert Griffin III. Can this guy actually play? Robert Griffin III leaves, and now he's with the Vikings, and he is slinging it. And I got a chance to catch up with him his rookie season, and he's been professing his faith all the way to the Vikings now heading into the divisional. So he's a phenomenal guy, great character guy, and can play the game. Now you can no longer argue, can this guy play? He can play. And they may very well get past the 49ers. Do not sleep on the Minnesota Vikings. Don't do it.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
All right, man.
And, of course, Sean hosts Going the Distance. You can catch Sean on Going the Distance this weekend on the CBN News Channel. It's Saturday at 6:30 and Sunday at 7:30, both Eastern times. Coming up, Lauren Daigle shows her crossover appeal yet again as she is set to perform at a major music festival.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN NewsWatch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Yes, right on time.
From Superbook.
Pepper's Pizza Palace is donating pizza for everyone today.
Wait.
I have big plans today.
Trust in God even when times are tough. He has a plan for your life.
Hey, we're gonna be late for the grand opening.
My parents want me to help with this outreach thing, feeding the community. What am I supposed to do here? Superbook! Join the Superbook Club and get Superbook The Birth of Moses, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25.
Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys thrown into the Nile River, and I have a 3-month-old brother.
The Birth of Moses. Yours for a gift of only $25.
What will you do the next time the soldiers come? I do not know, but I trust God has a plan for all of us.
Superbook Club members, free streaming for seasons 1, 2, and 3 is now available.
Singer Lauren Daigle will be performing at the popular music festival Coachella. Daigle plans to perform there once again and show her crossover appeal to secular audiences. Coachella brings in some of the music industry's biggest artists every year with a crowd of celebrities and influencers. Daigle will be performing both Sundays of the festival, April 12th and 19th. That's wonderful. Praise God for opening those doors for her. That's it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day and a great weekend.